CLS Farms is a fifth-generation family farm rooted in the Yakima Valley, the heart of American hop country. Their intense climate and steady water supply help produce bold, consistent aromas that brewers rely on. CLS grows high-quality hops along with certified organic apples and soft fruit, all backed by sustainable practices and Global GAP certification. They support both public breeding and their own proprietary varieties like El Dorado, Medusa, and Zappa. Learn more and catch their latest hop talks at cslfarms.com.
Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl. Late last week, the Siebel Institute, the venerable brewing school in Chicago, announced that it would be leaving the city and reopening in Montreal. The announcement by the school's owner sent shockwaves and sadness through the brewing community. This week, Professor Randy Mosher is here to talk about the school's impact and legacy, and to give an update on his latest book project titled Your Tasting Brain. But first, if you like this show, I hope you'll consider leaving a review on your podcast platform of choice. Helps other people find the show, and it's a nice little boost for us here at the home office. Been talking about this on the show for a while, and you often hear Andy crouch at the cold open of the shows, but the way we're able to keep bringing original content to the beer industry and curious beer drinkers is through your support. We've created an affordable underwriting program that is easy on your budget, helps you get visibility, and is an altruistic way to directly fund writers, photographers, and editors. Please visit allaboutbeer.com/support to learn more. When you're at the website, poke around a bit, read some of the recent articles, and peruse the archives, which go all the way back to 1979. Tune into other podcasts like Brewer to Brewer and the All About Beer podcast. You won't be disappointed. And follow us on social media at All About Beer to keep up with everything else we have going on. We'll get into the conversation in a moment, but first, here is a note from this episode's sponsors. We thank them for their support, and we hope you'll give them your business. Today's episode is brought to you by Stomp Stickers. Stomp is built for the business community, serving everyone from small independents to larger franchises. Whether you need low minimums for a limited batch or bulk pricing for your go-to products, they've got you covered. Join thousands of breweries that trust Stomp for their custom printing needs. Go to stompstickers.com and try them out and score 15% off of your first order with the code FIRSTRUN.
Calling all hopheads. Dogfish Head's 60-minute IPA is a fantastically hoppy India Pale Ale that's beautifully balanced thanks to their unique continual hopping method. Delivering a pungent hop flavor that isn't crushingly bitter, 60-minute is continually hopped throughout the boil for a full 60 minutes. Starting to see where the name comes from? Check out dogfish.com to learn more and to find some 60-minute near you. Dogfish Head Craft Brewery, Milton, Delaware. Please drink responsibly.
On November 20, 2025, the Siebel Institute of Technology, the oldest continuously operating professional brewing school in the Americas, announced that it would be leaving its longtime home in Chicago and moving to Montreal. The school said the decision to move came after, quote, a comprehensive review of operational costs, industry trends, and increased student visa challenges to enter the United States, end quote. John Hannafin, the general manager and director of education for the school, made the reason for the move abundantly clear, saying, quote, recent regulatory changes in the U.S. have made it much more challenging for many of our international students who have become the majority of our student body to attend classes in person. This relocation in North America classroom operations to Montreal allows us to pivot without sacrificing the student experience, end quote. The school has been owned by Lallemand, the yeast company, since the year 2000, and that company is based in Canada. So it's not to say the company never would have moved the school, but the current political reality in the U.S. heavily influenced this decision. The move takes place on January 1st, and to show how quickly things happen, when I reached out to Keith Lemke, the one-time vice president of the school, and more recently the marketing manager, he said he was already gone from the office, and his last official day on the job was November 26th. It's hard to quantify just how important the Siebel Institute has been for beer in America. There's been a post floating around online about how every favorite beer you've had here in the U.S. was directly influenced by a Siebel graduate. Breweries in the Windy City are grappling with the loss, and the school has long been a conduit of new friendships, collaboration, and education by proximity and city association. To help make sense of it all, I'm joined by Randy Mosher, the author, speaker, and educator. He's been involved with Siebel for decades now and lives in Chicago. We spoke less than a week after the announcement, and he was still processing the news. Here's our conversation. Randy, thanks for being here. I'm wondering, did this news catch you by surprise, or did you have a little bit of a heads up beforehand?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I knew
Okay.
that I knew that they were kind of in trouble when they were having trouble filling their fall program, mainly because they were people were reticent to come into the U.S. from the outside of the country, and then the government instituted a pretty draconian policy where anybody who wanted to get a visa to come in for this kind of thing had to submit all their user IDs and passwords for all their social media to let the government comb through them to look and see if there was anything they didn't like.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, it's very, very draconian. And
That's
you
one
know,
word for it. Yeah.
so Siebel used to back, when I first was associated with them back in when was that mid 1990s, I guess. And they used to do a lot of business with Miller and AB and I think maybe some of the Canadian breweries, but larger players, right? And over the years, as those groups have consolidated, they've switched to doing their own training. And
Yeah.
so that as a market, like really wasn't, wasn't viable anymore for Siebel. And of course, that was sort of replaced by the craft beer market and everybody really wanting to get trained up even like the courses that Ray and I taught were really about beer styles that they had never in their 100+ year history done because that's not something that the big breweries really cared about, so they weren't going to spend their money to teach their people about that. So then we had a lot of craft brewers, and then they started doing quite a bit of business with Mexican breweries, and there was a bunch of people always coming from Central America and coming from Brazil and different places, a little bit from Asia, a little bit from Europe. And so I mean, more recently, their classes were probably just guessing maybe 70 to 80% foreign.
Wow.
Yeah. So when this administration started getting really crazy with requirements for that, that just
Again,
was
one
like
word
a
for it. Yeah.
cliff, just dropped off like a
And,
stone. And I knew there were warning signs this summer because John's like, I don't know if we're going to even do the diploma course, because they need at least, I think, 10 people or so to do it. And so then it was a surprise. It was sort of a not surprise. I didn't know it was coming exactly, but I did expect it. So, uh,
but I mean, that just seems wild to me of getting 10 students to fill the diploma course. Like, even in these current times, even in the headwinds facing the industry, 10 people to do that course shouldn't be difficult.
well, you would think not, but it's an expensive course, so that's an issue for people. It involves travel and lodging too. You got to get there and you got to stay somewhere in Chicago, and that's not cheap. So it's a pretty big investment. And I think, they've trained a lot of craft brewers over the decades. And how many more diploma trained brewers does America need right at this moment?
A lot.
Yeah, well,
I mean, there's
I know it's
there's a lot of mediocre beer out
there's an
there. Like,
endless
yeah,
need, but there's
yeah,
not like in terms of business, you know,
I get that part. Yeah.
I mean, and that's also like who's going to fund it? Are the students supposed to pay for this? If employers send in somebody, that's a big commitment because not only are they spending tens of thousands of dollars for this program, they're out 6 weeks of a key employee
Yeah.
that they got to figure out how to deal with. So you don't. I don't know. It's people trying to get in. I think more than people who are already employed, except for like those, Mexican breweries. They're sending a few people and because they just want them to be better trained and they don't have the training the training program set up in Latin America like they do here.
Yeah.
Um, so, I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't seem like a big ask, but the beer world is small, and the beer education world is even tinier.
Yeah.
So, and of course, you've got all these community colleges too offering programs. They're not nearly as extensive as what Siebel does, but they are places you can get some kind of degree or certificate in fermentation science or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah,
So
and there
that's
is good
been an
value in
influence.
those, but I mean,
Yeah,
it's just Siebel as the institution, and I mean, and
yeah.
I'm not knocking any of the newer schools, but the
Yeah.
faculty as well at Siebel has always been. Yeah, I mean, it's. I think you're a household name for most serious beer drinkers and brewers, but I mean, when you go diving through the staff pages and everything, there's folks that might not be, you know, super well known outside of certain beer circles, but that are a real murderer's row of you want to learn fermentation. These are the people to help you do it.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I'm an outsider. I mean, I'm just like I'm well known, but I'm not like at these guys' level. You've got Richard Dubé, who used to run breweries in Canada, and he's brilliant. And there's a lot of really very very super experienced technical brewers on the that come in and do classes. They don't really have a lot of permanent, like Richard does the online learning, manages that and teaches some, I think, in the diploma, um, most everybody else is just sort of like come in and we'll pay you for a certain number of days, and that way they can get people who are real specialists in whatever their area is um, over the course of the program.
when you well, let me back up a couple of steps then. How did you first get involved with Siebel?
I think I first was over there when I was working on writing articles, probably even before, well, let's see, I think even before Radical Brewing was published. So I had figured out that there was this place called Siebel, and it's not that far from me. And I think I must have contacted somebody there and or ran into him at a beer event or something. And I certainly knew Keith, but I'm not sure Keith was even involved at that point. That was early. But anyway, I started going in and plundering their library, and they were happy to let me come in and just look through, take notes, do whatever I wanted, and even loan me some books occasionally. And then I started doing graphic design for them. They figured out I was a graphic designer, and it's like, oh, we need some ads. If we're going to do ads, we needed, can you clean up this logo? So I started doing some design work for them. So now I'm a known quantity. And then when they started getting requests from people that were students and other people that were interested in taking classes at Siebel, and they felt there was a demand for classes on beer styles. And then so they contacted Ray and I, because I think Ray at that point had just gotten a Siebel diploma. So he was a
Ray Daniels.
Ray Daniels, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
So he was a known quantity to them, and he's obviously a very smart and capable guy. And
He's okay.
then, yeah, he's okay. But anyway, so he and I created this class called Master Beer Styles, and it was 3 days, basically kind of styles from a brewer's point of view. So we talked about ingredients, we talked about processes, we talked about kind of like that, how do you measure, like what are the parameters of beer and some of that kind of stuff. Talked about recipe formulation, and then we went through the styles, talking about the malts and hops and for yeast that were used to make those. And then after doing that for a year or two, the Siebel they started getting distributors and people like that coming in and taking the classes. And then with that, they were interested in maybe cutting it down to 2 days, because three was kind of a big ask for them, especially if they were traveling. And then they said, we don't need all this recipe stuff, but we'd really love some context, a little history, a little beer and food, a little bit about serving and pouring and glassware and things like that. And then I created another program that I taught by myself called what was it called? Anyway, I forget what it was called, but it was just 2 days of beer style, and that was what I stripped my PowerPoint out and created the outline to write tasting beer after teaching that material for a couple of years. So that's sort of my history with Siebel. And then ever since I've been doing some of those classes, and I come into the diploma program when they're about ready to leave for Europe and do a beer and food tasting just to have some fun thing to end the semester on. So.
I mean, there's all these threads I want to pull on now, but one of the things is when you talk about the parameters of beer, when you and Ray were doing that course about styles,
Mhm.
and there's been, I think, a shift in the last couple of years of what styles are and what they can be, and just how they've evolved. And I think
Mhm.
that the biggest one that's come to mind, and I had a conversation with the brewer 2 weeks ago about this, is Sierra Nevada Pale Ale winning in the ESB category at World Beer Cup earlier this year. And when you talk to the folks at Sierra, they say, yeah, but when you look at the parameters of what GABF judging or World Beer Cup judging was, Sierra Pale hits all of those check marks, and the way that pale ale, American pale ale, and you argue, I think correctly, that Sierra invented that style or perfected it or was the benchmark forever,
Mhm.
falls out of it now. And I'm wondering from an educator standpoint, you know, how do parameters still matter? Are they still like
Well,
how
they
hard is
sure
it
are.
yeah, how hard is
They
it
sh
to define these days? Yeah,
well, they sure are if you want to enter competitions. Half of winning competitions is good entering
sure.
and really knowing exactly, what to do. And just a little aside on the ESB thing, most people don't really understand that ESB is not a style term in England. It is a
It's a
it,
brand.
it is
Yeah.
a brand from Fuller's, and because Fuller's ESB was in the market really early on in the US when craft was still just beginning, that everybody got, it was pretty widely distributed. It was even on hand pumps in places.
Yeah.
I remember first hand pump beer I ever had. It was like, oh my God, this is so good. But it's a really eccentric one, and it's super malty, and it has really not a lot of hops. And that yeast, that Fuller's yeast, is a real malt accentuating yeast. So for all the style guidelines, they admit a little more color, and that's sort of the paradigm for what, just for sort of random historical reasons in the US, because that beer just happened to be the one that was known, and that ESB brand really on there was what everybody glommed onto. So in like at least my generation's imagination, a rich, malty, somewhat darkish pale ale is actually that's what an ESB is. So I think when people see Sierra, which is paler in color and a much more aggressively hoppy, it's sort of like for the old guys like me, it's like it does not compute. But honestly, you got to look at the guidelines. That's the only thing that
Sure.
matters, right?
And I mean,
So
and it fits the guidelines. And the conversation that we were having is, I mean, there's very few examples outside of Fuller's these days that are out there. And, if I had to guess, if I was a judge on that table, it would have been okay, there's some really nice beers on this table. And then you start, or you hope at the final table. And then you start talking about quality and you start talking about, what's in sync and what works. And
yeah,
in that respect, I mean, it's no surprise that Pale rose to the top, but
yeah,
it's just so interesting with, I love the brewer experimentation that's happening these days. I like people kind of
yeah.
messing with styles. But it's also really, I have to now ask more questions, I think, as a consumer than I ever did before when I stop into a new brewery, when they say, well, this is our American Pale Ale or our
Yeah.
American IPA. And it's like, well, what's the clarity on it? Or what are
Well,
the
and
hops that are
California,
in it? And what are
California
the, yeah,
IPAs and West Coast dry hop lagers, and I mean they're so like it's. I mean, and that's I think that's all fine. It's just fun. I wrote Radical Brewing. I'm for experimentation. One thing that's important to keep in mind is we have two sets of style guidelines at the BJCP, which were created and still are the homebrew guidelines, and the um, GABF and World Beer Cup style guidelines, and they obviously overlap a lot. But the GABF guidelines, they update those every single year based on brewer feedback and what's going on in the market and who's entering what, so that when they get enough entries, they split down a category and create a new, split previous category and make a new category so that they can shove all these West Coast Pilsners or whatever they are into them. And that's just, I think it's more responsive to the reality of the way beer's being bought and sold. Whereas the BJCP guidelines are much more backward looking and really sort of in the Michael Jackson mold of what's classic, what's historical. They have much, much more historical background on all the styles. I mean, they're both useful, but I mean the World Beer Cup guidelines do really make quite a bit of an effort to stay up with what's going on in the market right now. Whereas the BJCP, I think, I don't know when the last update of that was, but it was, I think, at least 5 years ago or so.
Yeah, I haven't been up to date on that in a while.
Right.
All right, I took us off track for a second, so I
No
want to
problem.
kind of get back though. So when this news came out about Siebel moving to Montreal, which is a perfectly lovely city,
Oh, it's a wonderful place. I love it.
there is I think there is one the loss by the larger brewing world of, America is losing one of its foremost education centers in beer for a different country, and there's
Hmm.
hurt that comes to that. And I've seen posts
Hmm.
saying it's every good beer you've had in the US can be traced back to Siebel, either because the brewer went there or was trained by somebody who went there or inspired
Sure.
by somebody who went there, so all that.
Yeah,
So
that's probably true.
yeah, but that's the 30,000 foot view of it.
Yeah. Hmm.
But it's also been synonymous with Chicago's beer scene
Oh, yeah.
forever. I mean, I remember going to the opening of the new brewery in 2014. I think we were there together. I mean, there's all of these, you know, Chicago brewers talk about when people come in for the class,
Hmm.
they don't just stay in their lodging, they go out and experience the beer scene. And there's this,
Oh, yeah.
you get to meet brewers from around the country, from around the world, and they get to be inspired by the great Chicago brewers and everything. What,
Sure.
and I think of you as a Chicago guy because you are. And
I am.
um, what does this loss mean for the city?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's just one more thing that's just chipped away from us. Nothing lasts forever, but it's sad to see this go down like this, precipitously and for reasons that are, to a great extent, really beyond Siebel's control.
Yeah.
I mean,
And could have been
they
preventable, but yes.
it could have been preventable. Maybe they spent a little too much on like a fancy new digs, you know, in an
Oh,
expensive
I
neighborhood.
meant by
So,
the government and by voters. This could have been preventable. But
well,
yes,
yeah, but who could see? I mean, who could have put two and two and two and two and two and two together to see that this would affect Siebel? So,
sure. Have you had conversations with folks around town, or is everybody still kind of absorbing this news?
it hit after Fobab, so that was the last time everybody was kind of together. So I think the word came out the week following. So the Barrel Aged Beer Festival, because there was, judging and a lot of brewers there. So that would have been the place to talk about it, but it wasn't. It wasn't because the news hadn't hit yet.
Okay. Do you think you'll be making the trek to Montreal?
Oh, very doubtful.
Okay.
Very doubtful. I mean, I'd love to have an excuse to go to Montreal. It's a wonderful place. I love it. The beer scene in Canada, in Quebec, is incredible. At least it
Yeah.
was the last time I was there. And the cheese up there, oh my God. And we never see any of it down here, but it's like going to France or Italy or something. It's amazing. So I love the food scene up there, and the beer's great. It's a lovely
Um,
city.
I see you keep getting me off on tangents. So now you said cheese, and
Hmm.
I very quickly had a flash of that event the two of us did together years ago, where we were pairing beer and cheeses. And I've always learned so much from you on that front. And I've been thinking really just for like the last week or so about how beer and food conversations have seemingly dropped off. And for a long time, I mean, I had the cookbooks come out.
Yep.
I mean, you had all these great lectures and things in your book, and I saw Garrett Oliver last week, and I was thinking about the
Mhm.
Brewmaster's Table and just
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the pairing and all of that, and how it's. I don't see a lot of beer dinners being advertised anymore these days. I don't see a lot of um, thoughtful pairings on menus. It's just hey, we have beer, hey, we have food, do what you want, get what you like. And as the industry right now is in some of these headwinds, I was thinking just about like also Thanksgiving is this week, and the saisons that I usually put on the table. But that there's just am I alone in thinking that we've sort of forgotten about beer and food pairings on a regular basis in the larger world? I know
Yeah.
you haven't, but
Well, I mean, I think it's just sort of one of those general things that people are all excited about their ramen, but like the beer pairing just seems like dad's thing, for the younger people. And like maybe they're doing beer and like food and seltzer pairings, but I doubt it because like who would want to do that? And so I don't know. I think it's just one of those things is it it it's it, it's little moment in the sun came and temporarily went away. But I mean it's I think for people who are like, oh, beer's done, that's the end of it. But it's like, we got 12,000 years of beer history and probably an equal amount of people eating and and drinking beer at the same time and
yeah.
maybe thinking about it. So it is not going anywhere, but it does seem to be, uh, you know, in the shadows at the moment. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, I'm an optimist about that because, like, who's going to develop a lifelong fascination and interest and in the culture of seltzers?
Um, if you're doing a Thanksgiving meal this week, do you
Mhm.
have a beer ritual? Do you have a beer what's the word that I'm looking for? Um, I've lost my words.
A beer, yes, a beer.
Yes, a beer
Well,
yeah, a tradition. Is there
a
some yeah.
little. I like the Allagash Curio.
Oh, the is that the that's the barrel
That's
aged
the accidentally
triple?
barrel aged triple. So the
Yeah,
story I heard is they had got in a bunch of fresh barrels, but they didn't have any stout ready, and so they were looking at the barrels, thinking, "Well, shit, we got to put something in them." And somebody goes, "How about that triple?" It's like, okay, let's put the triple in there. And then they tasted it. It's like, holy crap, this is one of the best things we've ever done.
sure.
So I love it. I think it's great with turkey. It's incredible with pie,
Yeah.
either
Yeah, the
pumpkin
sweet
or
potatoes are always the what I think of with that beer.
yeah. We don't do those,
Oh, okay.
but everything else. I mean, it's great. Although I was out at two places looking for it and I can't find it, so I don't know what I'm going to do.
I think yeah. Well, I know they've pulled their wild program back, but you'd think that Curio would be still
It's
available.
always been there, but I
Yeah.
mean, I have to go to the giant Sam's or to the giant Benny's to find it. So, but
All
that's
right.
my only ritual. We usually have some white wine. My wife likes champagne, so I'll pop a bottle of sparkling something cheap sparkling because that's what she likes. Doesn't want to spend the money on champagne. Although we're going to a champagne tasting on next Wednesday, so
No.
that's our little Christmas thing. I'm the
Okay.
DD for that, so.
Okay. Um, all right, switching gears a little bit, unless
Uh-huh.
there's any other Siebel thoughts that you wanted to.
No, I wish I had more. There's a little, I think I heard there's a little get together tomorrow um, at the new Goose Island pub where Keith spends a lot of his time and money.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go down there and just have a little bit, participate in the wake, I guess it will probably be. But so I don't know, I may have more. I may know more tomorrow, but
Sure.
I mean, I think the broad strokes are, and like I said, what the
What
statement was. It's just I
what
don't
they
think there's a
shared.
lot behind it. So,
Yeah.
except it just has been a kind of a shrinking pool for probably the last 5 years, I would guess.
Um, the last time we sat down with microphones, you had just delivered your manuscript for the new book.
Yep.
And I keep feeling like I see some social media posts on LinkedIn where I
Mhm.
think you actually have a presence. It's not fake Randy Mosher out there. This is real
Oh
Randy
no, this
Mosher
for
posting about it.
this is me. This is my
Yeah.
full-time job now, pretty much. So,
Okay. So the book is getting ready. It's almost out.
book will be coming out on May 15th.
Okay.
It's on pre-order now on the University of Chicago website. There's a discount code for it, or they're discounting it. It's also listed on Amazon
Okay.
at the
What
moment,
do you
but
know
it,
the
it won't be.
discount code?
Uh, you know, Let me see if I can get that for you, and you can
Okay.
put a link on
And the
it
name of
onto
the
your
book
site.
is
Your Tasting Brain,
Your Tasting Brain.
with the subhead A Sensory Approach to Wine, Beer, and Other Pleasures.
Yes. So has it evolved since the last time we spoke? Like in through the editing process? Like
Well, oh yes, yes. You're a
is this
writer.
do you
You
want
know
do you
what?
want me to take this off air now?
Oh,
Is
no,
this
no, no. Do you remember the Monty Python Holy Grail, right?
yes.
So there's a scene in there where there's monks walking along and they've each got a big piece of plywood or something, and they take about 3 steps and then they bang that thing into their head, and chanting, and then they take 3 more steps and they bang the thing in there. That's what that's what
That's writing and
that's what
editing. Yeah.
removing 100,000 words from a 215,000 word manuscript feels like.
Oh, Randy Mosher, no way.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
brutal in 3 tranches. And I could never get the publisher to just come right out and say it's too long. And so they were kind of just beating around the bush and beating around the bush. And finally, I got to the point where it's like, it's like, is it approved? Is it not approved? It's like, well, we will publish it either as an academic book, but that has consequences, including a much higher price and much smaller distribution, and so it's going to be like a $90 book or something, or we can publish it as a trade book, which is for most people out there, a trade book is a book,
yeah.
and but it's got to be 400 pages or less. And doing the calculations, it's like you could probably do about 115,000 words. So it's like,
Wow.
okay, now I know. So,
Yeah.
and at that point, I was still like 25, 30,000 words short of that target. So another round going through every single chapter, looking at every single sentence, every paragraph, every section, like what can I take out? How can I, shave off a few words here and there, or get rid of big chunks or whatever. So, I mean, that's what I've been posting on my social media is all this stuff I cut, because we cut a lot of illustrations too, that we
Yeah.
just thought, we got to just get it down, and I can always use them for other things. I don't know that even if I had known the limit when I started writing, it would have been hard to write it to length, because, you know, this was a completely research project for me. I had a little knowledge about sensory, but it was in by no means comprehensive, and it was not at all based on what the current science actually says. So I started from zero, more or less. I had just enough knowledge to ask good questions. And so I just kept asking questions and going to try and looking it up in Google Scholar, reading the papers, 5 million words of papers, and then
Wow.
like highlighting papers, then from the highlighting, outlining to make a document that I could access more easily. And then, meantime, keeping all of the chain of citations intact. So I knew when I put a sentence in the thing, I had to plug in that citation there so I didn't lose track of where my information came from, so the whole thing is all footnoted. But I just kept coming across really fascinating things. I thought, this is so interesting. I'm going to write this up. And then when I got the whole thing trying to shave it down, it's like, yeah, finding out why human beings don't have a gene to regulate uric acid is maybe just a little too tangential, even though it's a really fascinating story.
Well, I
So we
mean, for
have
everybody
gout.
out there with gout, like we want to, we want the answers to that.
Yeah, it's really cool, but it's just like it just didn't quite make the grade. I'm going to put that on social media. It has to do with apes and starvation.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's a really interesting little story.
It sounds like it. Um,
So
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
so anyway, it is in we're done with copy editing. I'm expecting really any day now to get the typeset galleys back, and then I got to figure out how to create an index without shelling out more money to pay somebody to do an index. And I don't know. We could talk about that offline,
Yeah, that's
but
that's
it's such a grueling, gruesome task, and I really don't want to do it, and I don't want to spend any more money on this thing. So we'll see what happens.
um with all of the processes aside, where it stands right now when it comes out in May, and for everybody who's going to line up and devour this, um, what is your author hope that they leave when they get to that final page and close the book before they start reading it again? Um, what's that author hope that you get they take away from it?
I hope that it does for them what it did for me, which is to just really open my eyes to how what our internal reality is, like how our bodies and brains really operate, which is in itself a really fascinating story. And that's one part of the market for this book are just people who are curious about psychology and physiology and, human bodies and all of that. But it also has given me an enormous amount of perspective about how to both there's sort of two big tasks that people who read this book might be engaged in, and often both. And one is flavor, is like tasting. So really understanding when you're tasting something, what are the pitfalls? What are the little traps? Does people's how does the what do wine people do as opposed to what do beer people do? Like how do each of them sort of categorize and what's important to them, what's not important to them? Because that's a sort of a semantic framework that drives all the acquisition of knowledge for sommeliers versus cicerones, say. But then on the other side is flavor creation. So everybody who brews, for example, they're flavor creator. Anybody who cooks is a flavor creator. Winemakers are flavor creators, although wine is a little bit more hands off. The idea of it, and in reality, I don't know, is always like this. But the idea of wine is that get the best ground, find the grapes that grow best on that ground, and make the wine that God wants to have there you know. But the commercial reality is, I'm sure, not like that exactly. But that is sort of the approach. Whereas beer is like it could be anything you want. So what do people want, and how does expectation play into it? How does marketing and just what you call a beer and what you like on a beer when you have like oddball ingredients, what do you call out and what do you not mention? Because that has like sets up expectations that you may or may not want, right? So you have to be very like thoughtful about that and really kind of put yourself in the shoes of the people who are consuming your products, which is always part of the artist's duty, right? Is to understand your target and your the people who are going to enjoy your art, hopefully. But what's their psychology? What are they prepared to put up with? What are they going to reject? Like how far can you push them before something breaks down and it just throws them off and they don't want to have anything to do with it? So it turns out in our brains, this notion of congruence, things that are supposed to belong together, it's huge, and congruent things are perceived with much more positivity and much more affection, and incongruent things force the brain to do an enormous amount of work. And the result is like people view them very much with suspicion, and I don't know about that, and all of that kind of stuff that we're so it's trying if you're doing new things, it's like where's that line that with your audience do you know how far you can push them because they like that they want to have a little tickle of new things, but there's a limit to that. So all of that kind of stuff I think if people just soak it in, practice it, because you can't just read a book and be good at this. It's really about your personal journey as a taster and as a flavor creator. There's no substitute for just getting nose on and digging in and learning in that way, because very different than just reading. So,
I know it's not going to be easy for you to get to that point with everything else that you still have to do, but I'm excited about May. And I know
oh
you'll be
yeah, me
excited
too.
when it's out in the world. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no,
just
me
yeah.
too. And like I said, I'm really pondering. I mean, just trying to get as much social media out. I really like if there's any sommeliers or chefs out there or spirits people that might be interested in this, I urge you to get onto my website and contact me directly. I'm looking for to make those contacts. I know a ton of beer people, but I'm a little short on people in that world, and I think that's an important that's an important market for me. Even though all of this material, it's not in the WSET guidelines for the sommelier program, but it's really good stuff to know. So,
Um, for those who don't know, the website is
randymosher.com.
randymosher.com, and you have links to all of your very real social media
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram,
Okay.
I'm on LinkedIn, and
Okay.
I'm posting every couple of weeks or maybe even a little more than that. I'm doing a newsletter, so if anybody wants to sign up, you could look. I've got all the blog posts on there that are things that I have uh, really mostly taken from excess copy that I cut out of the book. I just posted something about a big article on coriander, like 1,300 words on coriander, which I am a little obsessed. But so I'm going to do some culinary stuff too, and you know,
All right.
I'm excited, really excited to be done with it. Although it's a little weird, I'm not used to having being existing without some giant project hanging over my head. But we are pitching around another book and trying to do a plan B in case we don't get a publisher. I may publish an ebook myself or something radical like that. So we'll see
God,
what
I admire
happens.
your stamina. Um, all right, so randymosher.com is the main gateway for all of this important knowledge and
Correct.
newsletters and everything else. All right, so everybody go to randymosher.com. Before I let you go, like I said, it's Thanksgiving week. We mentioned curio, you mentioned turkey. I said sweet potatoes, and you dismissed that pretty handedly. So what is your favorite side on the table
Gravy,
at Thanksgiving? Really?
gravy, gravy.
Okay.
I think that's like that makes the meal. I usually do a heavily smoke roasted turkey where I dissect the breast and leg thigh quarters and
Yeah.
cook those on the smoker, and then I take all the rest of it and roast the bones and make a really nice stock out of it, and that becomes the basis for gravy. And usually buy some extra you know turkey wings or whatever, some other poultry to go in there just to add to that. And it's mashed potatoes. My wife makes a spinach ring with a with pearl onions and a Gruyere
Wow. Pearl
cheese
onions.
sauce
Yeah.
put in the middle of it. That's something we always have to have. We've got a friend coming over who's bringing cornbread, but we're keeping it pretty simple. So
Okay. See, I'm now trying to reconcile in my brain gravy as a side because I always think of it as like a topping, but it is past, so it can be. I feel like this is hot dog a sandwich.
I grew
Um,
up in Indiana, John. It's
okay.
just like in my bones. And so I don't know. I like it goes on the meat, it goes on the turkey. For me, it's like the best part of the meal.
Okay. No,
I mean,
I'm
you're
not
right. It's
arguing
a
with that
sauce.
being the
It's a
best part. Yeah.
sauce.
I'm just trying to figure like on the side. That's all. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
okay. Um these are the important questions that we're getting to the bottom of these days. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean maybe that's the next book is pondering the great culinary questions of the world. Is hot dog a sandwich or is
Oh
is
man,
gravy a side?
that's a way to get death threats.
RandyMosher.com is your conduit for all of your thoughts on Randy's Thanksgiving pairings and food. Thanks so much for doing this. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Congratulations on the book. I'm excited, but
Thanks so much. Yeah.
And happy Thanksgiving to you.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Do you have a Siebel story you want to share? Let me know. And as always, you can reach me anytime via email at johnholl, that's JOHNHOLL, at allaboutbeer.com. Make sure you join the This Week in Rauk Beer group on Facebook or follow at TW Rauk Beer on Instagram. Upload your photos, join the conversation. And you can support us by visiting allaboutbeer.com/support. When you're at the website, you can check out new content as well as the archives, and you can find links to follow All About Beer on social media. Before we run, here is a note from this episode's sponsors. We thank them for their support. We hope you'll give them your business.
CLS Farms is a fifth-generation family farm rooted in the Yakima Valley, the heart of American hop country. Their intense climate and steady water supply help produce bold, consistent aromas that brewers rely on. CLS grows high-quality hops along with certified organic apples and soft fruit, all backed by sustainable practices and Global GAP certification. They support both public breeding and their own proprietary varieties like Eldorado, Medusa, and Zappa. Learn more and catch their latest hop talks at cslfarms.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Stomp Stickers. Stomp is built for the business community, serving everyone from small independents to larger franchises. Whether you need low minimums for a limited batch or bulk pricing for your go-to products, they've got you covered. Join thousands of breweries that trust Stomp for their custom printing needs. Go to stompstickers.com and try them out and score 15% off of your first order with the code FIRSTRUN.
Calling all hopheads. Dogfish Head's 60-minute IPA is a fantastically hoppy India Pale Ale that's beautifully balanced thanks to their unique continual hopping method. Delivering a pungent hop flavor that isn't crushingly bitter, 60 Minute is continually hopped throughout the boil for a full 60 minutes. Starting to see where the name comes from? Check out dogfish.com to learn more and to find some 60 Minute near you. Dogfish Head Craft Brewery, Milton, Delaware. Please drink responsibly.
If you like smart audio content, a reminder that All About Beer has a separate podcast channel. Just search All About Beer wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday. The BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. And as for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.